Hey, pastors and leaders. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Spirit Anointed Leadership. We're so blessed to have you with us. This podcast and VCast is designed to equip, empower, and encourage you as we go after our mission together. I'm really excited about today's conversation because I've got two of my best friends in all the world. Blum, Kyle Brown are joining me today, and we are thick as thieves, have a lot of fun together, talking about ministry, and I love supporting these guys who are on the front lines. They have the real jobs. I don't have the real job, but I'm just delighted as we're going to talk today about how is it that we can have ministry friends together and do life, and what a difference that can make. And so I just want to ask you both the same question, and that is can you remember a time in your life when you were doing ministry in isolation, when it kind of felt lonely and isolated? And talk to me about that, and how are you navigating those days when that happened? So I don't care, Kyle, do you want to go first? That's great.
Sure. I think for me, it probably was when I was a youth pastor at Berkeley. I mean, I had a pretty good relationship with my lead pastor, but it was a little bit more of, boss relationship and maybe a few leaders, but none that I was at the time super close with. So yeah, struggle with that. I remember being really good friends with Jeff Eckert for a season, and that's when Mark Carroll and him were over at Kentwood, KCC together. And I remember going over there and doing ministry stuff with them and literally driving back and being like jealous that they kind of had each other. And I was new into the region, so didn't know a ton of people at the time. And I mean, I remember just struggling with that. And I mean, how did I manage it? I think, you kind of just push through. And I think some of it was you try to build some relationships with the leaders that you have, but then you're always kind of wrestling with like, I can be friends with you and you are my leader, but what's the appropriate boundaries? So,
Right. Brian, how about you? How would you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was probably when I transitioned from being the worship pastor at Frontline to being the lead pastor. And it wasn't that I was it was a lonely time. I knew tons of people and had relationships, but all those relationships changed, right? When you become like the leader or the perceived, boss or authority, suddenly like relationships I had and things I thought were okay to say, suddenly it was kind of weird or awkward or there was just distance, you know what I mean? And it did feel like, man, I don't know anybody so much on the inside of the church that I felt like I could just talk to and be real with about, whether it be like struggles I was having or just even, just certain conversations just felt off limits. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. And you both, I think, had, back in the day, you both had relationships with Pastor Wayne Schmidt from KCC, Kentwood Community Church, when he was the senior pastor there. And Wayne was very generous with his time, and he would meet with pastors and that kind of thing. So you had those kinds of things, but it's different, right? It's different from having kind of a mentor-mentee relationship and actually doing life with pastors and others who are doing it. But then a really unique and kind of cool thing happened. So Pastor Dennis Jackson had left his position at Spring Lake Wesleyan, now All Shores, and he was working for what was then the West Michigan District, and he was doing some mentoring of leaders, and he got a group of pastors together who were in the greater Grand Rapids area, if I remember right. And this is long before my time, but the two of you ended up being invited into that group and got into that group. And then, as the Lord would have it, Dennis ends up becoming the European director for Global Partners. So he ends up leaving. Yeah. But this group that had been that came together stayed together. So talk to me a little bit about what that was like. What was it like when Dennis was there, and then what morphed when Dennis left, and that kind of thing. So, Brian, you want to take that one up first?
Sure. Well, I'm trying to remember now. I think in that particular group, with the exception of Eldon Sanders, who's the pastor at Crossroads, I think all of us were new into our lead pastor roles. If I remember right. So I was new to the lead pastor role. You were new at Berkeley in the lead pastor role. Correct. Jim Manis had just came. Steve Jones had just came to Life Change. So Eldon, I think, was the only one who had been already a lead pastor and was still in that position for a few years. Yeah. So I think like part of what that was, I think, I think from Dennis's perspective, he was just trying to gather some guys who were like, hey, we're new. We kind of need some help. Like, what are these guys going to do? Are they going to take this thing off the rails, And so, but then also just to provide, some connection. Okay. And so I remember like we went through, like it was like Keith Drury Strategetics stuff. Remember that? Yes.
I thought it was Bill Hybels' Axiom.
Yeah. Oh, I think we did that too for a while.
Yeah. So those two things. Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay. So there was like some intentional, like we're trying to learn together and create an environment where we're going to grow together. But I think over the time with Dennis, it became kind of like a safe place to come and talk and, just be real with one another. And I mean, a lot of time we just spend laughing at Kyle. I mean, that was just a lot of the time.
Easy.
So,
easy.
Yeah. So, I mean, we just had those relationships just developed around, we all just had a need, a need for friends in ministry that could relate, but they're not part of your church. So you could just come and kind of download like, oh man, I'm dealing with this thing with my board, or this person. This is like horrible to say, but we've even laughed. There've been people who have left like my church mad and like we'll get together and Kyle will be like,
gifted us.
Yeah, gifted. Like, thanks for gifting me with this. Like, because they come to his church, and then 9 months later, you know how this goes. If you're a minister, you know
Crossroads,
these. Yeah,
Eldon.
They're at Crossroads. Like, hey, Eldon, you got him now, baby.
It's like a white elephant gift exchange that you just keep passing it around.
Exactly. I mean, as ridiculous as that sounds, I think we all kind of helped each other. It relieves the pain a little bit of when something like that happens. You almost need a place where you can just come and normalize a little bit, laugh about it, and just kind of be human.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the value that kept us together after Dennis left, right?
Yeah. And I think I even remember Dennis was transitioning out and he had kind of challenged us, if you guys want to keep going, you can. And if not, it's fine. And I remember we all were in agreement pretty easily, like, we'd like to keep going. But I think the big aha for us, if you remember, is like we were going through Strategetics in a book and we wrestled. And I think really easily we realized we didn't need the book. And I mean, from that first year with Dennis, we did it. Other than that, in all these years, which has been a lot of years, we've never done it because we realized that's the thing that we needed the most. Like, I can go buy a book. I can go watch a podcast on my own, or watch a VCast or listen to a podcast, but to be in a room with other people who, from the moment you sit down, you don't have to explain away stuff and they just know where you're coming from. We realized that was the value. And so I think a huge thing for me has been, it's a safe place where, there are times when guys sit down and they're like, I have done Christmas for the last 9 years and it's in June or July and they're like, I got nothing fresh. What are you guys doing? And there have been multiple years where we have like done somebody else's idea for Christmas the following year, or Easter, or staff transition stuff and HR resource things. There have been so many ideas and resources that have been passed via phone, email, extra coffees that have happened on top of our lunches that have said, hey, would you mind getting together another time that we could I'd like to pick your brain more on that. So I think that has been in never, ever, ever an agenda. Eldon Sanders is the savior of our group. Shout out Eldon.
Yeah.
He organizes it. He sends out the email. He's the one saying, hey, it's summer. We're all going to be gone. Do we want to do? And we all agreed. No June, no July. We're all going to be gone. He sends out the email. He's the kind of the glue that really keeps us all together. He's the one that'll bring us back on track and say, should we pray before we eat, or, throw some stuff out. But it really almost is like a different person kind of leads the way every time based on like a need someone has or a question that somebody has. There's almost no agenda except we just bring pretty much just our vulnerable selves to the conversation, and it goes a different direction every time.
Yeah.
So let's talk for a minute about, if we can, just about the logistics. So how often do you meet? How long do you meet for? You said you take July and June and July off. So what's the rhythm? of this, Brian?
Yeah, it's once a month, and we get together. We get together and have.
Don't tell them where.
Okay, don't tell them where.
No, I'm kidding. It's just too embarrassing. People are gonna be like, "Are you kidding me?" All the places, but don't tell them. It's fine.
It's the same restaurant. We go to Big Boy off of Pearl Street, downtown Grand Rapids.
Okay.
I mean, it's not at all like the destination restaurant that you'd want to go to, but like it's central to where all of us are. So everybody kind of has an equal drive, from the different places. And yeah, it's just a lunch together once a month. And yeah, like Kyle was saying, there's no like sent out ahead of time agenda. What do you want to talk about? I mean, I feel like over the course of a year, we'll kind of cover some of the same ministry stuff. Some of it's like problem solving, ministry things, but the kind of the goal is just like, you can be real here. We can talk through things. Sometimes it's really personal stuff. I mean, I still remember the group where Steve shared with us that he had been diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And multiple myeloma. I had a meeting where I came and gave similar news, and Steve and I have had offline conversations where he's just been an encouragement to me, just through what's it like to go through chemotherapy, all that kind of stuff. And again, like when you talk to your parishioners or whatever, at church, and they're asking how you're doing, you give one level of answer, like, yeah, here's how the chemo is going. But when I talk with Steve, it's a different conversation. Right. It's a different level. And I just know I can do that because we've built that relationship over the years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the logistics are really more like whatever we share, whatever happens at Big Boy stays at Big Boy type of thing. Okay. We keep it there. I mean, we've walked with each other through personal things, family related things, and then church problem solving, ministry related things. And yeah, sometimes we're just laughing hysterically for the whole meal. It doesn't even get serious.
Okay.
But sometimes that's what we need. You know what I mean? It's just like someplace to just go and, take the pressure release valve and, just have fun.
Okay.
And other times it's like a really serious, like we're praying for each other, and it gets pretty intense. So,
okay.
I think the thing that's nice about it too is there's no like guilt associated. So the goal is we meet every month. But it's a reality that it seems like maybe 3, if we're lucky, 4 times a year, we're all there.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe more than that, but there's plenty of months where the email goes out and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, something came up. Jim's like, I got a funeral. And there's no guilt. There's no, we see where your priorities are. Sometimes it's 2 guys can't make it. We've had times where there's just 3 of us there. If it's like for some random thing, none of us can, we might cancel, but otherwise we just kind of keep going. Who can be there is there. And I think that's a nice thing. Sometimes you feel this pressure in ministry, especially if you're like meeting with people regularly, like, man, if I got to tell them I can't come, I'm going to feel bad. Right. I'm going to let them down. I'm going to hear the whole like, I'm not as important. And with this group, everybody gets it.
Yeah.
No, like you don't even need to give a reason or an excuse. Like, can't be there this month, and everyone's like, "Well, we'll miss you. See you next month." So I think that's been a gift. Just even that, I never see the email and feel like pressure. Look forward to it, know. And I'm always bummed if I can't be there, but you don't feel pressure if you can't be there.
And my assumption is that it's on the same day and the same week of the month. Is that right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Thursday.
Yeah.
First Thursday.
First Thursday of every month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what's interesting is that because I'm old enough to remember this, so years ago, the Western Church tried to do this thing where they put together a leadership development journey, right? LDJs. And they basically, and every district kind of did it in a unique way or whatever. But I don't mean this mean towards the people that, tried to organize it, but it didn't really make it. It didn't catch the momentum that they were hoping it would catch. Why do you think that your group has made it compared to like an LDJ group? Would you have any insight into what makes a group make it and what perhaps makes a group not make it when it comes to that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, obviously chemistry has to be a part of it. You have to have that with each other that just kind of develops, I think, naturally. I would say, something that helped with us is that we were kind of similar stage of we came in, all of us were kind of new except for Eldon, to this role. And so all of us kind of came together with this sort of like, okay, I'm not the expert here. You're not, I'm right. There's no one upping. And then I just feel like we forged over time the ability just to be real with each other. I mean, there is nothing about that group that it's into like, how big is my church? How big is, compared to yours? How good was how many people came to Christ last year versus how many? There's just none of that. It's just not the place we're trying to one up one another or, and I feel, I'm not trying to like throw it, but a lot of times when pastors get together, there is that, there's this sort of like,
bucks and butts and,
exactly. And you just, that's where the conversation goes to, well, nobody's going to stay in a group where they're feeling measured all the time. Yep. And that's just not what this is about. I think over the time, there was the natural chemistry. There was the fact that we were all kind of time, we were all going, man, we all had our hand up like, we can learn from one another. This is great. Right. And then that forged deeper friendships to where we can just be real with each other. Now I think it's more about I just know I need men like this in my life who can, help me, so.
Yeah. I wonder if some of it is even a little bit of the, like, I agree with everything you said. And I almost wonder if also some of it is like a little bit of a get to versus a have to.
Yeah.
Like instead of somebody coming and saying, hey, you really need to do this and prescribe this. I mean, in the beginning, it was like, wow, this is really cool that Dennis asked us to do this. He organized it. But afterwards, it was all, do we want to do it? And everybody just kind of anteed up and said that they wanted to do it. And so from that standpoint, we're not doing it because somebody's making us or somebody said, the thing that would be really good for, we've already all determined ahead of time, this is good for us.
Right.
So we're choosing it. We're saying we know we need it as opposed to somebody else telling us that it's good for us. And I think that the big thing is it's just been relational. Mm-hmm. Kind of the newest member that got added to the group is I just got connected with Doug. Doug Swink reached out to me and said, hey, I'm transitioning into lead pastor role. And I've been informed by some people at the GLR that there's some similarities to your church in what kind of when you took over at Berkeley, could we start connecting some? So we started doing it a little bit one-on-one where we connect and then via phone and Zoom. And eventually I just kept thinking like, I know it's a little bit of a drive for him, but I wonder. And so I reached out to the group and I said, are you guys cool if I invite Doug? And everyone in the group was like, man, he'd fit great. And I said, I don't know if he'll say yes. That'd be the longest drive. And sure enough. And I mean, he pretty much makes the drive just about every time. And he has by far the longest drive, 40 minutes?
Yeah, right.
And it's been great. And we've it's been couple few years now. And it's been like he's been a part of the group, forever. So I think that was a get to though piece.
Yeah.
Nobody was making him, nobody at the GLR said, well, now that you're a new lead pastor, you have to join. Right. He on his own sought out other people that were doing things. And then when invited into the opportunity, he was like, man, that'd be good for me. So I think that's been a huge key piece. Plus, I mean, I keep going because, my goodness, I get to sit with people like Brian and Eldon and Jim. I bring a notepad every single time and a pen, trust me, because either A, I'm taking copious notes because there's brilliant things being said, or B, I'm taking notes of inappropriate things that are being said that I'll be used for blackmail. Now, Steve Jones has a picture out there of me when we still met via Zoom during COVID. We literally still met, and I maybe did a few things via Zoom that I wasn't thinking.
There may have been a gesture that was captured perfectly, and now we all have a copy of this picture.
And now Steve flashed the picture and then passed it on to everybody else. Berkeley may be looking for a new lead pastor.
Well, here's the deal, pastors and leaders. Here's what I'm not going to do. Is I'm not going to force you to be in a group, because as you guys have already said, it's got to be a want to, not a have to. But what I hope that you picked up from this particular session, our time today, this episode of Spirit Anointed Leadership, is that I hope you picked up. I think it's just natural. These guys, their lives are enriched. Their souls are filled by being able to hang out with some other pastors and leaders once a month and just do life together. And I just would hate to see you to continue on in ministry in a sense of isolation, in a sense of, man, if I get a diagnosis, or if I have a staff member or a board member that goes wild on me, I don't want to go through that all by myself. So I really want to encourage you. Who are some other pastors and leaders, even if they live 45 minutes away, even if they live longer than that? Can I tell you, my group, I can remember so clearly, I was part of a church in a small little town called Sturgis, South Dakota. And there was a pastor and their staff that lived an hour and a half away. And these were guys that I connected with. They were my group. And I happen to be the youth pastor at a church and their whole staff, and they invited me to join their staff meetings. And once a month I'd go over and I'd do that. And that was so life-giving to me. And it provided everything I need to enrich my soul and spirit. So it might look different, but I'll tell you, that hour and a half drive one way was worth every minute of it for me. So I want to encourage you, please don't do ministry alone. Please don't do it in isolation. Get together with some other folks, even if it's a bit of a drive, and allow Holy Spirit to minister to you through rich friendships, through relationships that will really build Holy Spirit momentum and meaning into your life. So thanks again for joining us for this episode of Spirit Anointed Leadership. It's been a huge blessing to have Brian and Kyle with us. And I just want to encourage you, please rate us, give us a 5 rating, please. And also share with your friends about this and make sure that you invite other people to join in this conversation, because we really do this for you. This is not for us. This is for you. We want to serve you well. So subscribe wherever you watch us, wherever you listen to us. That would be a huge blessing to us. Thanks so much. Have an awesome day. We'll see you soon.